man, it's me, Kevin Smith, and welcome to Masters of the Universe Revelation Celebration. Here, I'm going to provide commentary tracks for the first 5 episodes of Masters of the Universe Revelation that concentrate on the writers. We're celebrating the writers of this show. Now, I didn't do it alone. I came up with the story and whatnot, but everybody took a script. And so throughout this mini-series, we're going to sit down with every writer of each episode and do a commentary track. So hopefully you've already watched Masters of the Universe Revelation, now on Netflix. It dropped July 23rd. Watch them all, then go back and watch them with this commentary track if you want to find out a little bit more about how we got to where we got to. Okay, so for the first episode, I'm going to be going solo-mish because I was the only writer. And so other episodes, I'll be here interviewing the other writers. So it'll be me and Dia, me and Mark, me and Tim, and then me and Eric. But for episode 1, you're just stuck with me. So before we get going, I've told the story many times, but just to keep it all in one place, Mattel asked to meet with me. They had some super secret project they wanted to talk about. I said, Mattel, like, where do I got to go? And they were like, El Segundo. I was like, what? That's too far. I ain't going, man. I don't want to talk to Mattel. And then Rob David, thank God, was like, we'll come to him. We'll go to his house. And so they made me sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And then Rob, when he came over, was like, we're thinking about you for this He-Man and the Masters of the Universe thing that we're doing. And I was like, oh, how interesting. I was like, I watched every episode of that cartoon in the 80s. I even told Rob, I was like, mostly hate watched it because, I was like, they never stab each other. I was 13 when I was watching it. So, like, I was kind of like, this is for babies. But I watched every episode because we didn't have cable TV back then. You just watched what was on TV. So I was like, I'm overly familiar with the mythology, considering I never had the toys. That's another reason why, like, I never took it into my heart, because I didn't have the toys. My parents were like, you're not getting another toy. We spent so much money on Star Wars toys. Now you're not going to play with those? Like, I was already stopping playing with action figures and stuff. They're like, no Masters of nothing for you. So I didn't have the toys to bond with, but I knew the episodes very, very well because, they put them on high rotation and whatnot, and I'd watch them after school. So I said, yeah, I guess, like, let me think about this. Let me put it through my brain pan, think about it for a day or two. And I did, and I came up with a story. And so I was like, Rob, I got a story. Like, you want to hear it? And told Rob a story. He's like, that's dope, man. He's going like, all right, so, like, now we just tell Netflix that story. And I was like, oh, we got to pitch this to Netflix? I was like, I'll tell you right now, Netflix never bought anything I ever made. So, like, I've been in their pitch 6 times. They're very nice, but they never buy anything. So, I'm not going to be much help there. And Rob was like, oh, this is already sold. Netflix already bought it. And I was like, what? It's already a show? Like, this show is going to happen with or without me. So, I was like, great. Yeah, I'll jump on the story train. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And so that I pitched, the story I told Rob, I then told Teddy Biaselli, who's our boss at Netflix. And between those 2 towers, between Rob, Teddy, and me, there's 3 towers of Paternia. That's how we came to Masters of the Universe Revelation. So Teddy, as an exec at a company, never had an experience like this. Has forgotten more about Masters of the Universe than you'll ever know. World's biggest Motu fan, has every figure, his own figures from childhood, set up in his house and whatnot. Rob, runs the Mattel television, division. He's a story man. He wrote, like, Masters of the Universe comics for DC Comics for the last few years. So between those 2 cats, man, I was like, oh my God, we're infallible. Like, they'll never let me go off the track. They'll never let me not let it be what it was and what it needs to be. And what it needed to be was what Teddy wanted. Teddy had this idea to do a very serious handling of Masters of the Universe. He's like, I loved that show when I was growing up. Every episode I thought He-Man was going to get killed by Skeletor. He's like, and it didn't happen. I was so relieved. He's like, then I got older and I realized they didn't even punch each other. Like, that was never going to happen. They never clashed swords. Like, he realized there were no stakes. He's like, so I always dreamed of doing a Masters of the Universe, and not even doing. He was like, I dreamed they would do Masters of the Universe, like very serious, very like grown up. And so I was like, all right, like I'm your guy. I could totally do that. If you wanted me to reinvent it, I'm not your guy. But you want me to just keep going with it? Like that's what I did with Daredevil, Green Arrow, my comic book runs. And that's how I got the job too. Rob was like, I loved your Daredevil and Green Arrow run. So I felt like, my God, if you could do that with somebody else's characters, you might be able to do that with these characters. And I absolutely fell in love with all of these characters, man. Like He-Man, in many ways, for me, was not a superhero because he was more like, he was based on Conan and stuff. So he was more a figure of science fiction fantasy. But, once you get into the lore, you realize, thanks to DC Comics, who wrote Masters of the Universe for quite a few years, they created a lot of the backstory and lore, including the secret identity of Prince Adam that people didn't know about. Some people knew and some people didn't know. That came from the world of comic books. So put through that prism, I was like, oh, He-Man is Superman, but he just don't wear the suit. He just goes nipple out, man, which in many ways is much bolder for a superhero. So I dove in and I wrote an outline for a 10-episode series called Masters of the Universe, The End of the Universe. And that was the working title for, I think, like 2-3 months. And then Teddy was just like, we don't want to give it away in the title. He's like, let's just make it nebulous and stuff. And he's like, at the end of the day, a lot of stuff going to be revealed here. So revelation. He liked it. So here we go, man. We're going to watch Masters of the Universe, Revelation, Episode 1, written by yours truly. And I'm going to do commentary track on it right here for you. So everybody line it all up. Let's see. Ready to press play? On the count of 1, 2, 3, press play. This logo, which, if you look at it, is based on the old Mattel artwork of the cards. The whole idea of the opening credit sequence here, or title sequence, was about using the classic Mattel artwork, because they've got all this Boris Vallejo looking artwork in their library and stuff. And so I was like, let's use that. Like that'd be a cool way to highlight that this is about the toys. This is not technically a sequel to Filmation. That's why I was always like, it's a spiritual sequel to the Legacy series, to the Filmation series, because the Filmation series is owned by somebody completely different. I think Universal owns that library. So all of what we do is based on Masters of the Universe and the property as owned by Mattel. They created a lot of the backstory with the mini comics. The mini comics were led to the DC comics. So this opening sequence, I remember writing this. Like I wrote all those words and then bounced them off Rob. And I was like, what about this? What about this? And knowing that Liam Cunningham was going to read it. And oh my God, he shreds it. Sometimes I just smoke weed and watch that over and over again. Just the opening credit sequence. Look at my name. My name shows up right when Strider's foot comes down. I was so excited when I saw that. This play, written by Kevin Smith. Look at that. This play is exactly as I wrote it. Directed by Adam and Pat. Let me just take a moment to shout out Adam and Pat. They're our directors. I consider them co-writers as well. Story people through and through, man. So much so that when we got to like episode 10, they were remembering things that we had done as writers in episode 1 that they wanted to pay off. So, chef's kiss to them. Particularly any action sequence you see, they took minor words on the page and made it utterly dynamic. The boys are absolutely brilliant. They poured their hearts into this. Adam was like, look, I didn't grow up with this, but I come to love this very deeply. And he knows this shit inside and out now, both of the boys. They know their deep Motu mythology. Okay, so the idea here was to pick up some strands that were left from the old Filmation show. Chiefly being somebody is related to somebody else. That's all I'll say. And so that is kind of what we were going with. Also, the what if possibility of what would happen if the one person who didn't know He-Man's secret, found out in the worst possible way. As you can see from this beginning, it's a real bait and switch. because hopefully you're watching this, you've already watched it. That's He-Man, but it ain't He-Man. And if you know your figures, you know who it's going to be. First appearance of our Sorceress, version of the Sorceress, as voiced by the great Susan Eisenberg, the voice of Calm as Wonder Woman in the DC universe and in life in general. I always tell her, I was like, God, it must be amazing to like listen to your voice. You could read me to sleep. And she's got this calm, soothing voice. Teddy was the first person to point out like this scene took place outside of Grayskull, and he's like, she can't go off Grayskull property, only in Falcon form, bird form. She can't go out as the Sorceress. So everything had to take place on the Jawbridge, which I was like, that ain't no punishment. Setting something on the Jawbridge, man. The great Mark Hamill playing our Skeletor. That was my favorite moment of Skeletor's, in one of my favorite moments. There's more to come, but when he doesn't even get out his opening line, Skeletor, and he just gets knocked out. So the idea, there's Stephen Root as Cringer. Liam Cunningham is playing our Man-at-Arms. Griffin Newman plays Orko, and he is fantastic. They're all great, the entire cast. Stephen Root is playing our Cringer, of course, and Sarah Michelle Gellar is playing our Teela. Chris Wood is the voice of the guy we're about to meet very soon, Prince Adam, also the voice of He-Man. A lot of these cats I'd worked with before. Diedrich Bader, who plays King Randor, I've worked with on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. Let's see, Griffin I'd never worked with before. He lobbied to get the job on Twitter, man, and he got it, and he was perfect for it. He was so passionate about it. Stephen Root I've worked with many times, so I thought he'd be fantastic as Cringer. Chris Wood I've worked with a couple times. First time, of course, being on Supergirl, where he played Mon-El. I tend to do that. I tend to rework with a lot of people I've worked with before. Mark Hamill I worked with as well on Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. So the idea behind the first, let's say, 10 minutes of this episode was to give you the exact Masters of the Universe that you remember. Although if you go back and watch it, I'm not saying we're better, but we are. But we get to be better because we weren't making a children's cartoon that was all about teaching lessons and not showing fighting. We get to play it as adult. I referred to this as adult animation for the last 2 years until I watched Robert Kirkman's Invincible. And then I was like, we're not adult at all. We're a kiddie show by comparison. I mean, they put a human being through a train, many human beings. It was kind of nuts. So, it's adult themes. There's no sex. If you're like, I can't wait to see him fuck, you're out of luck. There's no sex in Eternia, particularly our version of it and stuff. It's a high adventure tale that begins very simply as, what could be a standard issue adventure from the 80s in terms of Skeletor wants Grayskull and he shows up with, the shaping staff and tricks the Sorceress, but she can't be tricked because she knows it's Skeletor, but she wasn't expecting Faker, and so that's where we stand right now. Same old, same old. And she says in the episode, as she did in the teaser that everyone saw, time after time you try to take this castle. It's meant to be we've been here before. As you see, we introduce every character and they get their showcase, Evelyn, the malevolent magic of Evelyn, and Lena Headey takes the stage. She is amazing. Watch her performance. It's track it through these first 5 because it becomes very important for the back 5 as well. So everyone gets to, essentially the idea behind it was, we knew people who were going to watch this, the audience it was made for. Teddy wanted to make a show at Netflix, and Rob wanted to make a show at Mattel Television that catered to the people that watched the original cartoon and collected the toys. The other show they're doing, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, is more a kid-oriented kind of CG reinvention of the show. And the movie is going to be whatever the movie's going to be when they eventually make it. But both of the boys, Rob and Teddy, were like, this is essentially for us. That's what Teddy was like. I just want to make the thing I've always wanted to see my whole life. I want to make sure that audience is fed. And Mattel naturally was very into that idea because it's that'll help us sell toys, for heaven's sakes. So boom, that's how Revelation came to be. So the opening is meant to play look, everything you remember is absolutely true. Cringer's still chicken shit. Orko's still a little fuck up. No, some people know that Prince Adam is He-Man, other people don't. Teela clearly does not. Teela gets to step up. You hear a bit about her backstory and whatnot. She refers to herself as an orphan girl. She doesn't quite know who her mom is. So as we go into our story, things are exactly as they should be. The idea, I said in the writer's room, the idea is the audience is going to come to watch this, the audience it's made for. We want it to feel like, hey man, your toys are exactly where you left them. And they're still doing the same exact things. And now you just get to play with them as a grown-up. I love this moment. I love this moment. Listen to the Mark Hamill laugh in the background. I like his dope when he kind of gets the spell where he's hearing from the sorceress. Originally in the script, it was going to be him being contacted by the spirit of Grayskull. But instead, I was like, you know what? It's the sorceress. And the sorceress plays a big part in our series. So I was like, you know what? Let's establish that she does this. And she does it. It's something we took from the Filmation cartoons. He has a very rich history, the character of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. But He-Man himself, Mattel invents him. He's just, He-Man all the time. DC gets a hold of him. They add Prince Adam, the secret identity, because it's DC Comics. That's what they do. Filmation adds a few other spokes to the wheel. So He-Man has had many, many parents. And the mythology has grown over the years. This leans into the mythology. Like, we don't go, like, any of this is, none of that shit happened. It's all real. It all happened. It all plays. This, this is a spiritual sequel to the old TV show. So the idea is, let's have this play as the next episode. When it got canceled, this would have been the next episode. If they were like, look, we're going out anyway, let's make this one for adults. And so that's what we went and did. Here we have the big transformation moment. Hats off to Pat and Adam, because in the script, it's like one line. He raises his sword and says the famous words and becomes He-Man and turns Cringer into Battle Cat and then leaps into action. And they turned it into this gorgeous Technicolor sequence. Because unlike the old cartoon where He-Man went from the form of Prince Adam, who was just He-Man with clothes, to He-Man, our version of He-Man is Adam is younger, and he does not physically resemble He-Man at all. So it's more of a Shazam type of thing. So he goes from being this person to being this powerful form, the most powerful man in the universe, according to the Mattel lore. Stephen Root, you'll hear throughout the series as Cringer, but you won't hear him as Battle Cat. There was a choice we made, where we felt like when he's Battle Cat, he's Battle Cat. He's feral. He's not like, see here, Skeletor. We were just like, he could talk his full head off as Cringer. And Stephen Root gives him a lot of heart. Wait till you get to episode 2. But in terms of Battle Cat, we felt like, let him roar. Just let him roar and stuff. You don't hear him right there, but the great Henry Rollins is going to be the voice of Triclops in the next episode. The Fisto and Clampchamp, also played by two people they haven't announced yet. They don't have any dialogue in the first 5, but in the next 5 they do. They have almost their own episode. And so, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who's playing those cats. Trapjaw just got punched by Duncan there. This is one of my favorite. Look at him. Bam, bam's a Roton into the, and just keeps fucking running. The most dangerous man in Eternia. That's what we call him. Look at that. Everyone's like, when they saw the teaser, like, I had that. I had Bastard Oh my God, it looks just like it. That was the idea. Pat and Adam made very sure to lovingly depict the vehicles. And depicting the vehicles was a big thing, man. Bringing in the land shark and stuff like that. Again, we wanted it to feel like your childhood. And most of those toys came from Mattel, most of the vehicles and whatnot. So we tried to work them in as much as possible. Here we get to see He-Man in glorious action, just as you remember him from back in the day. The Skelecons come from a very rare storyline that ran in the British Masters of the Universe comics. But Pat and Adam loved the design, so boom, we brought them in. This is one of my favorite bits, man. When they, it's literally written into the script. When, the horse goes apeshit and fucking Man-at-Arms comes over and punches it in the face. That's, an homage to Conan, without whom we don't ever get to have this show whatsoever. And he calls him a nightmare. He's like, I'll handle this nightmare. Orko, as you'll see, played pretty much like Orko, although in our telling, he's not quite as goofy or silly and stuff like that. Just grown up just a tiny bit, but he'll grow up even more. Watch this, man. He gets punched in the face. I wrote that in the script. It always made me laugh. I was like, Man-at-Arms punches this metal horse right in his face. Just seemed like a badass thing to do. So we're still, 13 minutes in. This is still very much could be an episode of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe from the 80s, although granted there's been way more violence in this than there ever was in the entire run of that series. So as we enter the heart of the castle, that's when the story is about to start changing. And, it doesn't throw out everything you know. This is when the stakes get a little higher. Now, props to Adam and Pat again for saying when I turned in the first script, they were like, can we have a massive He-Man and Skeletor fight? They're like, right now it's like a quarter page. We want to milk it to death. And, they're like, these two have never really gotten to fight in the old cartoon, in the Filmation cartoon. So the idea of being able to show them crossing swords, using the Havoc staff, like trying to kill each other. They're like, audiences have wanted to see that for years. And I was like, you're absolutely right. So we'll beef up the fight in the heart of the castle. Because I was in a hurry to get to what we're going to get to, which is the turn. I was happy to write all this stuff because, again, it was like pretty much channeling the 80s. And this is the innocence of Masters of the Universe, this part of the show that we're in right now. But things turn, and that's when the show grows up a little bit. So I was like, I was eager to get to that because that's where the plot kicks in and that's the rest of the episodes. But the boys were absolutely right to be like, let them fight. Let them fight. And we did. And, the fight sequence that the boys put together is made up of things that they brought to it, things that were in the script, things that were in other scripts. Like the giant hand bit, I think, appears in another episode or a script for another episode. But they were like, let's bring that up. That's pretty dope. So, and look at that. Like, He-Man punching a giant fucking Skeletor fist. Like, you ain't gonna get that in the real world. You might one day. I think this might actually grease the gears because people will be like, oh my God, this stuff plays. You can make this work. For years, Mattel, Rob David told me at Mattel, a lot of people wouldn't like invest in He-Man or Masters of the Universe because they were like, that's goofy. But interestingly enough, Marvel, with Guardians of the Galaxy, opened the doors for Goofy, to take Goofy and turn it into kitschy and fun, and more importantly for the company, profitable. So suddenly, because of Guardians of the Galaxy, that's when they were like, oh, it's time. It's time to get He-Man going and stuff. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And a lot of people have been like, what happened to the name? How come you took He-Man's name off? This is where it turns, ladies and gentlemen, right here. This is the moment. And it was in the outline as well. As soon as Moss Man goes down, that's the end of the innocence. Like, that's us taking your childhood toy, we're taking one off the table and being like, and he's never coming back. But, this being sci-fi fantasy, does anybody really die? We'll see. So here we get to see Skeletor do something you've never seen him do before. And now you see He-Man, bam, do something that you've never seen him do before. He literally fucking rails Skeletor right in the gut with the Sword of Power. They don't just fight, he stabs him, and then Skeletor grabs the sword and pulls it in deeper. How metal is that? And He-Man's like, what the fuck? And this is where we get deep into Mattel lore. So we're going to introduce the notion of the Orb of Power. And the Orb of Power, he'll tell you. If you listen to Skeletor, he's going to tell you. That came out of like the Motu mini comics. So, we didn't reinvent the wheel here. We honored what came before. And the history of Castle Grayskull, people always look at, Castle Grayskull looks metal as fuck. Castle Grayskull, according to Mattel lore, is a false facade, as we see right there. As even the Skelecons are fucking freaked by it. There's the Palace of Wisdom. It was always the Palace of Wisdom. Castle Grayskull is an illusion, like a magic spell. Underneath, it's the gorgeous Palace of Wisdom. That goes right back to the Motu mini comics, as does the Orb of Power. And so we use that Orb of Power as our big MacGuffin, as to like, uh-oh, the Orb of Power is shattered, now what? And then we freeze. There's a line right here I'm so proud of when she says, but time is stronger than magic. I love that line. And, for the 2 years that we're working on this, I was like, oh my God, that's the best line I've ever written. Now I'm sure I probably heard it someplace else. It just worked its way into my subconscious because that line is too fucking good to just come from my head. I write shit like Snoochie Boochies, not like time is stronger than magic, which is a cool notion because that means magicians can die. You can wield magical powers, but like you can't fight fucking time at the end of the day. So here is where we get into exposition land and set up a lot of what our whole series is predicated on. As you see, Teela's like, wait a second, what do you mean? Like, she's about to say it, I think, in this form. Because Teela never knew that Prince Adam and He-Man were the same person. So they still haven't even told her. The Sorceress knew. The Sorceress knows a lot about Teela that she's never shared. Man-at-Arms knew, Cringer knew, Orko knew. But Teela, who Prince Adam was protected by, Teela protected Prince Adam, and He-Man, who fought side by side with Teela every episode, Teela, who sometimes saved his life, and he saved Teela's life, he never told her who he was. So this is a kind of magical moment. This is a total kid's imagination moment that goes back to me watching the show in the 80s. I was like, if he's already He-Man and he had the sword, what would happen if he said the magic words again? Like, because there's a way to undo it. He says, let the power return, and then he becomes Prince Adam again. But what if you doubled up? Like, what if you hit it again, man? You're already He-Man. You're like, by the power of Grayskull, and you get blasted again. Then what happens? So that's where this notion comes from. And the idea of the sword being a conduit, him being the spark, and perhaps like the sword can conduct all the magical energy that's breaking out of the orb and is going to destroy the whole fucking universe. And we get to see both Teela and Skeletor for the first time seeing that He-Man is this boy. He's been Prince Adam all this time. And that's one of my favorite moments where Skeletor is like, he's just a boy. And that boy is holding all the power of the universe in his bare hands. It says so much about Adam. There's this beautiful moment coming up here where Teela realizes what's about to happen. So does Adam. Adam looks over his shoulder. Chris Wood gave us this little like scared intonation. And then that's it, man. We take He-Man out of the equation. Now, some people are like, hey, the internet said that and you said it wasn't true. That's not true. Somebody on the internet said, I heard that the He-Man, Masters of the Universe show is Teela is a better He-Man than He-Man, and she gets the sword, and that, Teela's got a girlfriend. And I said, that is patently untrue. That's untrue. And I still maintain that. And I maintain that this is a He-Man story. This whole thing is a He-Man story. So even though He-Man seemingly dies, wink, wink, in episode 1, kids, like, don't forget, we all loved Zack Snyder's Justice League, and that was about Superman. And Superman wasn't even in it until, like, the last 20 minutes or whatever the fuck. We don't do that, but, we basically took a very superpowered individual and said, what happens if? What happens if he pulls out of that universe? What happens to all the people around him? Here, you're seeing an idea leaned heavily into by Ted Biaselli. He was like, I always thought that Marlena knew. King Randor didn't know, Marlena did know. So he's like, when this moment happens, she has to break down. Like, she's like, oh my God, we didn't just lose the champion, we lost our son. And that created like wonderful moment for like Randor to feel betrayed. This is where we're grown up. Not only when we burn down Moss Man do we take the turn, everybody's talking like a grown-up now. It's no longer about friendship and, let's get together and like you can help others and patience and all the moral lessons from the 80s. Now they're all acting like adults, hurt, betrayal. Randor is going like, I'm going to have this guy executed. He's about to turn and fucking scream at him. Listen to this. He's just belting it out at Duncan, man of arms, the most dangerous man in Eternia. Duncan could smoke this fool with a look. He wouldn't even have to pull out a laser and stuff. But Duncan's like role has always been about fealty to the crown. We play that a great deal in our storyline and stuff. So this is the moment where Teela loses it, where she's like, I am done. The idea that I've been lied to this whole time, and now she's got to carry this for the rest of her life, that her best friend and the person she loved literally just lied to her face, and he never got a chance to tell her why, never got a chance to make it right. She's got to deal with the loss of her friend, the loss of a loved one, and then deal with all the anger she feels about it. So as you could see, she's launching this anger at everybody. And the show, the characters in this moment are struggling to bring the show back to what you remember from childhood. Like, no. In fact, when they leave, Orko will be like, come on, Tila, we can get through this like we always do. But Tila has now seen the truth. Tila has had a revelation that, like, her whole life is based on bullshit, magic, all these legends, everything she's fought for. She's offered her life for these things. She's done. Throws down the tiara, has that wicked head of hair, and out she goes, man. There's Orko pleading for her to stay. This is where the story essentially begins. And now it's all about how do you make things right. That's all you ever do in a show, right? Right there you could hear Alan Oppenheimer, the great Alan Oppenheimer, speaking as Skeletor when he does our Mossman, the voice of Mossman. So when he was there, I was like, Alan, can you give me your best Skeletor? You know, because his voice, he's older, so he can't quite do it the same. And he's generally unwilling to do it for that reason. But I was like, can you give us your best, Skeletor voice of like, He-Man finally killed Skeletor, so you can hear it in there. The music by Bear McCreary that you're hearing, absolutely wonderful. We're not worthy of music this good. Feels like it should be done for a feature. But Bear felt that he's like, you guys treated this material so seriously, I couldn't not treat it equally as seriously. He went out and hired an orchestra overseas to actually compose the score, not just doing it on like a synthesizer or whatever. So there you see, we're at the end, Powerhouse Animation logo, the Mattel Television logo. Powerhouse, the good kids of Powerhouse, outdo themselves with every episode. And I'm here to tell you, the story outdoes itself with every episode as well. I firmly believe that episode 2 is better than episode 1. I firmly believe episode 3 is better than episode 2. I firmly believe episode 4 is better than 3, and 5 is better than them all. And wait until you get to 6. 6 is one of my favorite things that ever happened in media. 7 takes you on a magic carpet ride. 8, we were able to escalate with every episode to make it better. There's no slow episode. There's no like, fuck this noise. It's all woven into the tapestry of this giant epic adventure. And the adventure has just begun, man. So we took the board, we played the board the way you know it. See, everything is exactly where you left it. And then we took out one very essential element, and now we get to see what happens to Eternia when, their champion is no longer. Or is he? I guess we'll find out the more we watch. Hopefully you've enjoyed this commentary track for Masters of the Universe Revelation, Episode 1. I'll be back with the other writers of each ep, because even though there are other writers, it's all mine. I came up with the whole story, so I'm deeply invested in this. But boy, oh boy, the people that I'm going to be sitting next to, they took decent ideas and turned them into absolute magic. There's a reason the scripts get better with each episode. Even though I wrote on every episode, that's what you do as story editor or showrunner and stuff. But still, like bringing in all these other wonderful talents who you're going to meet, you'll see what a rich world we've made. Okay, kids, so Masters of the Universe is back. People were like, how come it ain't called He-Man? Because you took He-Man out of it? No, because He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is owned by Filmation, which is owned by Universal. Mattel owns Masters of the Universe. That was the original line of the toys in 1981. TV show is on, 83 or something like that. So that's when it becomes He-Man and the Master of the Universe. And that iteration is owned by somebody else, not the company that I've worked for, not the company that was involved with Revelation at all. So based on that, that title was not accessible to us. But the point that Mattel made when I got the job, because I was like, He-Man, man, He-Man. And they were like, yes, He-Man. And these were my marching orders from the people who sell toys, my friend. They were like, yes, He-Man, but we have a rich bench of characters that we want. There was a reason it was called Masters of the Universe. Rob was like, Filmation added He-Man and to the title later, but like Masters of the Universe allows you to play with everybody, not just focus on the one character. So those are my marching orders going in from Mattel Television, and that's why when I was like, all right, here's the idea for the story. a story where like we take our main guy out of the focus for a moment or two, and you get to see everybody else. You get to grow those characters. You get to, well, make new figures as well. So there it is. We're off to the races, man. I'm so happy to share this with you. I've been sitting on this for like 2 fucking years, man. That's the only downside with animation. It takes like so long before you can share stuff. And also the downside working on something you don't own. So, you know, if I'm working on a Jay and Silent Bob thing, I'll spoil the whole fucking thing long before you see it. I'm working for somebody else, they're like, you shut your fucking mouth. So I haven't been able to say anything until the show drops. Now that the show has dropped, blah. So come back next episode where I'll be sitting down with Dia and we'll watch episode 2 of Masters of the Universe Revelation, only on Netflix. Go watch it right now. Go watch it again without me. It'll be much more enjoyable, as my wife says. Ooh. This is the maquette. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the AKA Ask Kev Anything. Every saga has a 10-year anniversary, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what happens when Jay and Silent Bob get old. I'm Kevin Smith. Cheers,